Mr. Vice President, your opponent in this election, President Trump, has made your mental state a campaign topic. And when asked in June if you'd been tested for cognitive decline, you've responded that you're constantly tested in effect because you're in situations like this on the campaign trail. But please clarify specifically, have you taken a cognitive test?
No, I haven't taken a test. Why the hell would I take a test? Come on, man. That's like saying before you got in this program, if you take a test where you're taking cocaine or not, what do you think, huh? Are you a junkie?
What do you say to President Trump, who brags about his test and makes your mental state an issue for voters?
Well, if he can't figure out the difference between an elephant and a lion, I don't know what the hell he's talking about. Did you watch that? Look, come on, man. I know you're trying to goad me, but I mean, I'm so forward looking to have an opportunity to sit with the president or stand with the president in debates. There can be plenty of time. And by the way, as I joke with him, I shouldn't say it. I'm going to say something I probably shouldn't say. Anyway, I am very willing to let the American public judge my physical and mental my physical as well as my mental fitness, and to make a judgment about who I am.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a job to do. We all have a job to do. We speak with great concern about the drug problem in America today, but we fail to appreciate or address it for what it really is, the #1 threat to our national security. It affects the readiness of our Army, the productivity of our workers, and the achievement of our students, and the very health and safety of our families. America is under attack, literally, under attack by an enemy who is well-financed, well-supplied, and well-armed, and fully capable of declaring total war against the nation and its people, as we've seen in Colombia. Here in America, the enemy is already ashore, and for the first time, we are fighting and losing a war on our own soil. Every president for the past 2 decades, Democrat and Republican alike, has declared war on drugs. And each of them has lost that war and lost it miserably. They lost because they attempted to deal with only part of the drug problem. They lost because their initiatives were pulled apart by bureaucratic squabbling among their advisors. They lost because they always did too little and they did it too late. That's why the Democrats and Republicans in the Congress got together last year to write the law that required the president to give us a national drug strategy. The one you heard tonight. You heard him deliver it. We don't oppose the president's plan. All we want to do is strengthen it. We don't doubt his resolve. All we want to do is stiffen it. The trouble is that the president's proposals are not big enough to deal with the problem. His rhetoric isn't matched by the resources we need to get the job done. Quite frankly, the president's plan's not tough enough, bold enough, or imaginative enough to meet the crisis at hand. If you had a child in your family that was seriously ill, I doubt whether you'd call a family meeting to discuss what percentage of the family budget you were willing to spend to make him well. You wouldn't say that we can't afford to spend more than a penny out of every dollar the family has to cure the child. But that's exactly what the president would have us do. Spend one penny out of every tax dollar to fight drugs. The Defense Department spends $300 billion a year to prepare for a war we hope we'll never have to fight. But the president says he wants to spend only $8 billion next year on a war we're already fighting and we're losing. The president says he wants to wage a war on drugs, but if that's true, what we need is another D-Day, not another Vietnam, not another limited war fought on the cheap and destined for stalemate and human tragedy.
Come on, man.
Now I'm going to point out some specific things, 6 of them, that we find inadequate about the president's plan. I think the president has to join us in making a significantly greater commitment to these 6 areas to stem the rising tide of violence in America, and that's what it is, violence. First, we have to join together to ensure that drug dealers are punished swiftly, surely, and severely,
No one should be going to jail for a drug crime. Period. Nobody. Nobody.
And in line with what the president is calling for, we have to hold every drug user accountable. Because if there were no drug users, there would be no appetite for drugs and there'd be no market for them.
Nobody should be in jail for a drug problem.
It's not just how many people are using drugs. As the president said, the number of people using drugs, cocaine in particular, is down in our country. That's true. But the violence associated with drugs is spewing out all over America. I had spent years writing what became known as the Biden crime bill. The Biden crime bill. The Biden crime bill.
Democrats right now, especially African Americans, have really looked back on the 1994 crime bill not very fondly. Hillary Clinton herself has come out against it, even though her husband signed it into law. Well, the author of that crime bill was Joe Biden.
The Biden crime bill. The
Biden crime bill.
Biden's 1994 crime bill, while implementing sweeping gun control, also helped fuel mass incarceration with financial incentives to keep people behind bars.
The Biden crime bill.
The Biden crime bill.
The Biden crime bill is before us, calls for the death penalty for 51 offenses. A wag in the newspaper recently wrote that something to the effect that Biden has made it a death penalty offense for everything but jaywalking.
The Biden crime bill. Biden crime bill.
The Biden-Hatch crime bill, as it becomes law, God willing, I hope that we will have ended once and for all this notion that is a hangover from the 60s, that somehow Democrats are weak on crime and Democratic presidents are weak on crime and Republicans are tough on crime. The truth is, every major crime bill since 1976 that's come out of this Congress, every minor crime bill has had the name of the Democratic senator from the state of Delaware, Joe Biden, on that bill. I like the idea they keep in jail longer. I'm the guy that wrote the bill requiring federal judges to keep people in jail 100% of the time for which they're sentenced, and the notable exceptions only 85%. So I'm all for tougher enforcement.
We wrote the statute saying burning the flag in and of itself is a crime, period. Boom.
We changed the law so that if you are arrested and you are a drug dealer, under our forfeiture statutes, you can, the government can, take everything you own, everything from your car to your house, your bank account, not merely what they confiscate in terms of the dollars from the transaction that you've just got caught engaging in. They can take everything. We have laws in the last several years where we don't allow judges discretion to sentence people. Flat time sentencing. You get caught, you go to jail. We've gone from there all the way up to saying, under the leadership of Senator Thurmond, and I'd like to suggest that I take some small credit for it myself as well, and others, the presiding officer, that there is now a death penalty. And we passed it a couple years ago. If you are a major drug dealer involved in the trafficking of drugs and murder results in your activities, you go to death. And a number of other severe penalties.
Back when Bill Clinton's crime bill passed, Joe Biden was such an outspoken supporter, he said, quote, "I'd like to be running and have someone use the crime bill against me."
We must take back the streets. It doesn't matter whether or not the person that is accosting your son or daughter or my son or daughter, my wife, your husband, my mother, your parents. It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter or not whether or not they had no background that enabled them to become socialized into the fabric of society. It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons. So I don't want to ask, what made them do this? They must be taken off the street. That's number one. There's a consensus on that. Unless we do something about that cadre of young people, tens of thousands of them, born out of wedlock, without parents, without supervision, without any structure, without any conscience developing because they literally, I yield myself 3 more minutes, because they literally have not been socialized. They literally have not had an opportunity. We should focus on them now. If we don't, they will, or a portion of them will, become the predators 15 years from now. And Madam President, we have predators on our streets that society has, in fact, in part because of its neglect, created. Again, it does not mean because we created them that we somehow forgive them or do not take them out of society to protect my family and yours from them. They are beyond the pale, many of those people. Beyond the pale. And it's a sad commentary on society. We have no choice but to take them out of society. And the truth is, we don't very well know how to rehabilitate them at that point. That's the sad truth. I'm the guy that said, rehabilitation, when it occurs, we don't understand it and notice it.
Bobby Rush, member of Congress, said the other day, I'm ashamed that I voted for the '94 crime bill. You ashamed of that bill?
Not at all. In fact, I drafted the bill.
And that's terrible. I know it's hard to believe, but this very day, violent drug offenders will commit more than 100,000 crimes on this day alone. And the sad part is that we have no more police in the streets of our major cities than we had 10 years ago. And what the president proposes won't help much. What he proposes is no increase over what the Congress has already approved last year. In a nutshell, the president's plan doesn't include enough police officers to catch the violent thugs, not enough prosecutors to convict them, not enough judges to sentence them, and not enough prison cells to put them away for a long time.
Democrats' case on abuse of power is that the Bidens did nothing wrong. It can only be an abuse of power and not a correct use of power if the president was pursuing something under which there was no reasonable basis to ask a question about Hunter Biden and Burisma. Hunter Biden and Burisma, well, that's an interesting story. And I think just about every American knows there's something up with that. $86,000 a month, no experience, working for some foreign government while your dad's the vice president of the United States? Is there anyone who believes this is okay? I know we got a few of my Democrat colleagues maybe run for president or might run for president one day. Would you let your vice president have their son or daughter or family member out moonlighting for some foreign company? Maybe I'll use language familiar to the former vice president. Come on, man. This looks dirty as it is. Hunter Biden was making more than 5 times more than a board member for ExxonMobil. I've heard of that company. And so I went to read up on Hunter Biden, learn a little more about him, and I found this very extensive profile in the New Yorker. And here's what it says. Hunter said that at that point, he had not slept for several days. Driving east on Interstate 10 just beyond Palm Springs, he lost control of his car, which jumped the median and skidded to a stop on the shoulder of the westbound side. He called Hertz, which came to collect the damaged car and gave him a second rental. The Hertz rental officer told me he found a crack pipe in the car and on one of the consoles a line of white powder residue. Beau Biden's Attorney General badge was on the dashboard. Hertz called the Prescott Police Department and officers filed a narcotics offense report listing items seized in the car, including a plastic bag containing white powdery substance, a Secret Service business card, credit cards, and Hunter Biden's driver's license. That is what we would call evidence. And I don't want to make light of anybody's substance abuse issues. I know the president's working real hard to solve those throughout the country, but it's a little hard to believe that Burisma hired Hunter Biden to resolve their international disputes when he could not resolve his own dispute with Hertz rental car over leaving cocaine and a crack pipe in the car. It continues. Hunter stayed in Los Angeles for about a week. He said that he needed to get away and forget sooner after his arrival in LA. He said he asked a homeless man in Pershing Square where he could buy crack. Hunter said that the man took him to a nearby homeless encampment where a narrow passageway between tents, someone put a gun to his head before realizing that he was the buyer. He returned to buy more crack a few times that week. Again, not saying not casting any judgment on any challenges someone goes through in their personal life, but it is just hard to believe that this was the guy wandering through homeless encampments buying crack that was worth $86,000 a month to Burisma Holding. And that might be one of the reasons why when ABC asked Hunter Biden, hey, you think you would have gotten this job in the absence of your dad being the vice president? Well, he said, probably not. And then I looked to the record evidence, and I looked at the testimony of Mr. Kent. Mr. Kent was one of the witnesses they called on the first day. He said Burisma was so dirty that our own embassy had to pull out of a joint sponsorship with them. When Ambassador Yovanovitch was being prepped for her Senate confirmation, the Obama administration was so worried about the corruption around Burisma and Hunter Biden that they held special prep moments to try to get ready for the inevitable questions about this obvious corruption that the president asked about. Mr. Kent, again, one of their witnesses from the first day, also gave testimony that that the head of Burisma had stolen $23 million in the U.S. and the U.K., and that he paid a bribe to get off the hook. So again, it's not as if Burisma is pulling out new plays. Their playbook is to do dirty stuff and then go and pay bribes and hire the people necessary to make those problems go away. This is why the minority hearing issue is so important, by the way. You wonder why Republicans are so angry that we didn't have a hearing to put on our own witnesses and own evidence. And you may wonder why, well, if they feel so good about their case, why did they block our ability to put in evidence? It's because we have the ability to show that Burisma is corrupt. We have the ability to show that Hunter Biden is corrupt. And that totally exculpates the president. Because there is no way in the United States of America that honestly pursuing actual corruption is an impeachable offense.
Come on, man.